I'm just throwing out a quick little, well, it's probably not going to be quick, a little video, on probably not going to be little either, but a video on me talking about Spiral, aka Saw 9. I'm a huge Saw fan. I have a lot of emotions kind of building up over this movie that I just need to vent and let out. A lot of feelings. It would be cathartic for me to kind of make a video talking about this movie just so I can get it out of my system because I do love the Saw movies. So I haven't seen the new Saw movie. I need to get it out of my system. So that's why I'm making this video. I gotta get this out of my system. So this is gonna be my rambling of Saw 9, aka Spiral. So I'm a huge Saw fan. I've seen every single Saw movie a bunch of times, like millions of times, to the point where I basically know each one word for word. That's not an exaggeration. So I was really looking forward to Spiral, and I guess before we begin, I'll tell you where I was coming from walking into Spiral, my kind of stance on the movies beforehand. So I'm a big Saw fan, but I'm not deluded about the quality of these movies. I know that they are trash. Saw 1 and 2 are the only two movies I can say with a straight face are good. Those are the only ones I would recommend to people. Just Saw 1 and 2. Some people would go as far as to say the third movie is worth your time. I disagree. I can acknowledge that in Saw 3, they were still trying to make it more character focused. I just don't think the character stuff in Saw 3 works for the most part. I like the stuff with Jeff, but Lynn, Amanda, and Jigsaw, I think that stuff is really dull. And that might be surprising to hear because most of the fan base seem to love the relationship between Amanda and Jigsaw. Their relationship, it's something which I think is great on paper, but they didn't play it out in an interesting way on screen. So I just find that half of the movie really dull. But yeah, I don't go as far as to say Saw 3 is any good. I just think Saw 1 and 2 are the only good ones. I still watch every other Saw movie, and I still love every other Saw movie. It's just I can't say they are good with a straight face. I enjoy watching them. I love watching them. I find them really entertaining, but I'm not deluded about the. I don't mean to. I mean, if you like them, good for you. If you genuinely like them and not in an ironic way, good for you. I don't mean to be snarky about it. I might be coming across that way. And even a lot of fans love Saw 6. They try to say, oh, that's an amazing sequel. That's a great sequel surrounded by a bunch of boring, shitty sequels. I think Saw 6 is just as bland and mediocre as every other Saw movie. I wouldn't even recommend Saw 6 to tell you the truth. But there are a lot of fans who do like Saw 6 though. I'm not one of them. And the fan base, a lot of the fan base, even the people who know how kind of bad the other movies got and still enjoy them, a lot of the fan base hated the previous movie, Jigsaw, aka Saw 8. That to me, Jigsaw was just another Saw movie. It's no worse than the previous movies. It has all the same flaws as every other Saw movie. So to me, yeah, it's not a good movie, but it's another Saw movie. To me, like a lot of fans, like I said, who even they know how, they like the Saw sequels, even though they acknowledge how bad they got. A lot of them turned on the newest movie, Jigsaw. But yeah, to me, it was just another Saw movie. It's no worse than any other Saw movie. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with Jigsaw. I mean, it's trash, but so was every other Saw movie after 2. So me, it was in line with what you would expect. Okay, so coming into Spiral, what I wanted out of Spiral was something different. Ever since Saw 7, we all knew Saw would come back at some point. Saw 7 was kind of ending the original series until they would eventually reboot it, which they did in 2017 with Jigsaw. That didn't pan out so well, so here we are with Spiral, Saw 9. So the thing is, even with Jigsaw, even back then, I wanted them to do something new. Basically, I was asking for a new killer. Bring in a new killer, creating traps, but with a different agenda. So, because I think the whole Jigsaw's whole appreciate your life shtick, it's cool and original. Of course, we all loved that in the original series, but it's been done. It's time to do something new. So basically what I wanted was a new killer, creating traps for his own reason. And that's the thing. the appreciate your life thing is really cool, so it's really creative, but it's going to be really hard to top. So that's the issue with coming up with a new killer. So I was just hoping they would put their So I was basically thinking, yeah, it's going to be difficult to top. You probably won't top it, but just try to come up with something really cool for a new killer. So that's basically why I wanted out of a new Saw movie. Tobin Bell, we all love him. Bless him for coming back time and time again for every single Saw movie, but it's time to move on. It's time to start a new legacy of terror with a new killer. And, that's what Spiral was promising us. I wanted that with Jigsaw as well, but Jigsaw, Saw 8, it fell back into the Tobin Bell, John Kramer character once again, which was a massive mistake, in my opinion. So, we get the Spiral. Do we begin here? My initial thoughts, I'll just say, it's another messy Saw movie. There's some great stuff in here, but they kind of blew it. There's some good ideas, a lot of potential in this one, but they just missed the mark. I appreciate the effort, but ultimately this one they didn't quite make it. And I hate to say that, because apparently a lot is riding on Spiral, because with Jigsaw, Saw 8, they were hoping to make that a new series. So you would get... So we had Saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then with Jigsaw, they were hoping to make a new string of sequels. So Jigsaw, Jigsaw 2, Jigsaw 3, Jigsaw 4. A new, a new kind of line of sequels. Jigsaw was... Obviously, it didn't turn out so well, so... They basically, okay, let's go for another reboot. Chris Rock comes to Lionsgate with an idea for a new horror movie. And they turned it into Saw. A Saw spin-off. So this is what a Spiral is. It's another attempt to make a new string of sequels. So if you want to make a new string of sequels, obviously the foundation has to be really good. And unfortunately, I don't think they quite stuck the landing. And it's a shame because, like I said, there's a lot to like about this movie. And with some changes, I think this movie could have been an excellent start to a new string of sequels. But I think they missed the mark. So let's get into this. So, hang on. Good skin dry. So the story is, like I said, it's about a new killer targeting cops. We follow the Chris Rock character Zeke, who he's a detective, and yeah, I guess I shouldn't give away too much, but Chris Rock plays a detective, and he's in our police department that's being targeted by a serial killer, a Jigsaw copycat. So when it comes to the Saw movies, they tend to have this structure where you have two different storylines going off at once. In the one storyline, you have a person or multiple people going through a trap or multiple traps. And then the second storyline is with the detectives investigating the murders. And often, as you get towards the end of the movie, the detectives are often closing in on the trap storyline. So you keep, for most of the movies, you're bouncing back and forth between the trap storyline and the detectives, jumping back and forth between the two. So a big problem with that is that ever since Saw 4, I'm not sure who's responsible. Either Lionsgate or Twisted Pictures have demanded that the movies stay around 90 minutes long, because if your movie is around 90 minutes long, you can fit more screenings of the movie every day at the theater. So you can make more money that way with, more screenings. So a bigger opportunity to draw more people in to the theater to make more money. But the problem is with limiting these movies to 90 minutes and the formula that they have with half the movies, the trap storyline, the other half's the detective stuff, is that in 90 minutes, there's not really enough time to develop either side of the story, where there's not enough time to develop the characters in the traps to make us care about them. And then when it comes to the detective stuff, there's not enough time to make the detectives compelling characters to start with, but they also don't have time to make the kind of mystery or detective work the detectives are doing interesting or engaging. Because most of the detective stuff in the Saw sequels, it is bullshit. It's just, for the most part, I think Saw 4 does have some some genuine kind of detective work from Peter Strahm and Perez, but for the most part, the detective stuff in the Saw sequels is just nonsense. They aren't really doing anything productive. The detective stuff in the sequels is mostly spinning the wheels to pad out the running time to 90 minutes so they can release it in cinemas and pretend it's a movie. The detective stuff is in the sequels, it tends to be pretty bland. They aren't really accomplishing anything for the most part. But again, the 90-minute running time, it tends to doom the movies from the beginning because they don't have, like I said, they don't have the time to flesh out the victims and the traps to make you care about them. They don't have time to set up an actual detective story. So both sides of the story fall flat on their face. Now, with that said, Saw 2 was 90 minutes. And I love Saw 2. I think Saw 2 is a great, solid sequel. So, I don't know, with Saw 2, they managed to make it work where you got Donnie Wahlberg and Jigsaw, of course. That's the detective stuff. It's Donnie Wahlberg interrogating Jigsaw. And then the other half of the movie is the people in the traps in the house. So Saw 2, they managed to make that work. But I think that was a lightning in the bottle situation. I don't think they will ever pull that off ever again. So, you get the spiral. They've basically axed the trap side of that formula. So now we are spending the entire movie with the detectives as they are trying to catch the Jigsaw copycat, which I think is a great solid setup. I mean, like I said, you can't really do both storylines in 90 minutes. So either just, just focus on one. Just focus on one. And you can probably, well, they didn't, but with only one storyline going on, you can probably flesh out the characters and make the detective work engaging. And, well, I'll get to it, but I don't think they quite succeeded there. They tried, but they didn't quite succeed. And of course, there are traps in the movie, of course, but it's not like it's one big trap running throughout the movie that we keep jumping back and forth between. Instead, the detectives are doing detective work, trying to track down the killer. And every now and again, the killer will strike and put someone in a trap. So every now and again, you get your trap scene, but it's mostly the detective stuff, So the movie opens up with Chris Rock, of course, as he... It starts off with this cliche that I've seen a lot of people make fun of. I've seen a lot of reviews for this movie, and a lot of people make fun of this, where they kind of mock the opening of the movie, where Chris Rock, he's an experienced detective, and he ends up being assigned a rookie cop as his partner. So, of course, he throws a temper tantrum. I'm a veteran cop. I don't want to babysit a rookie. I don't want to show a rookie the ropes. And so it's kind of like a cliche kind of setup that you see in a lot of buddy cop movies. But, things are cliche because they tend to be cliche because they work, because they can be effective. And the thing is, yeah, it is cliche. It's like, oh yeah, you've seen this kind of setup a million times before. But honestly, I think they pulled it off really well. I will say this. The first 30 minutes or so of the movie, I really liked. I thought it was a solid movie for the first 30 minutes or so. And the relationship... So his rookie partner is William, who is played by Max Mangilla. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. It's a very funky last name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but they are both... I really like their relationship together. Of course, Chris Rock's character, Zeke, at first he's thrown a temper tantrum of, oh great, I have to babysit a rookie. But as the movie goes on, like you would expect in any buddy cop movie, they form a little bromance. They start to, Chris Rock starts to warm up to his rookie partner. And I like that stuff. The character stuff in the first half of the movie is really good. And I really enjoyed watching their relationship develop throughout the movie. I really, really enjoyed that stuff. It's a cliche as old as time, of course. The experienced detective, oh shit, I have to babysit a rookie, and then he warms up to him throughout the movie. Yeah, it's a cliche, but there's nothing wrong with being cliche as long as you do it well, and I think they were nailing it. They were killing it. I think Chris Rock and his partner, Max Mangilla, again, I don't know how to pronounce that, but they had good chemistry. I really enjoyed watching them bond throughout the movie. And I should... Right, let's go back to the detective stuff, okay? So, the detective stuff... your detective, the work that the detectives are doing should be engaging, I guess. That's obviously a big, important part if the detective stuff's going to be basically, the only story throughout the movie. And I was really with the detective work for the first half, where I was really liking the Chris Rock and his partner, William. I was really enjoying their relationship grow, and I was enjoying watching them do the detective work. The cops were actually following up on leads and trying to figure out they were actually tracking down leads. I guess I shouldn't give away too much, but basically the detective work kind of stops about like halfway through the movie, and the rest of the movie is essentially the cops standing around like lemons doing nothing, waiting for the killer to strike. The turning point of the movie comes about 30 minutes into the movie. It's basically after the finger trap. When the finger trap happens, the movie very quickly starts to go downhill, because not too long after that trap happens, the detective work kind of comes to a stop, and instead, the cops are kind of just reacting to stuff the killer does instead of being proactive and trying to hunt him down. So after the finger, well, not straight away, but a little while after the finger trap happens, is like, okay, the killer sent us a clue or a message. The killer basically sends them a message saying, come to the butcher shop. So they go to the butcher shop, and they stand around doing nothing, and then the killer attacks somebody at Chinatown. So they're like, oh shit, we gotta go to Chinatown. And then they stand around doing nothing. The killer puts someone in a trap. Oh, quick, we gotta go save this person from the trap. So, it's not exactly engaging to watch. The movie feels aimless and directionless, where, like I said, the cops don't really have anything to do. They are just reacting to stuff the killer does. So the movie feels kind of disjointed, like nothing's leading into anything. Just a series of random events are happening without any proper build-up. It's just them reacting to what the killer is doing next, instead of the cops kind of, making effort and progress and following some kind of mystery or anything. Instead, it's just the movie devolves into a string of random scenes happening without any kind of feeling that the scenes are leading into one another. So, like I said, the first half of the movie, or 30 minutes, I should say, ish, which is close to half, well, whatever. The first 30 minutes of the movie, great. I really enjoyed it. The pacing was good, where it was taking its time. Like, very early on in the movie, someone dies in a trap, and you kind of see the characters actually react to the death. In a Saw movie, it's normally, okay, somebody died, whatever, move on, But the characters we actually spent time with the characters kind of talking about their emotions and reflecting on the fact that somebody actually died. Because when it comes to the Saw sequels, obviously when someone dying is kind of, let's move the plot along, somebody's dead, whatever. So it was kind of cool in a Saw movie to see people kind of actually dwell on the fact that somebody has just died and actually, kind of process it. We have these actual quiet moments of people talking about their emotions, and I really appreciated that. Like, they actually go and visit the family of the victim who died in a trap. So stuff like that, I was like, whoa, this isn't just a Saw movie. This feels like a real movie. And I hate to belittle the Saw series like that, but that's basically what the series has become with the sequels. But the first half of the movie, it takes its time. Or the first 30 minutes ish. It takes its time. It's setting up the relationship with William and Zeke, the Chris Rock character and his partner. The characters are reflecting on the death of the guy who died in the train trap. It's good stuff, and it felt like a real movie, not just a Saw movie. It felt like a real movie that was a Saw movie, which it was great. I was really loving it, and of course, it very quickly went downhill when it stopped. So the character focused stuff basically stops, I feel, a little bit after the finger trap, and so does any of the detective work that the characters are doing. The movie becomes very hyperactive, very fast paced, and it needed the more quiet moments for the characters to kind of just stop and just, kind of just digest what's going on. I don't mean to be copy. I did see the Chris Stuckman review. I don't mean to be copying what he's saying, but I know he said that in his review, but it's really accurate. We needed more kind of quiet scenes of the characters just talking about what's going on and just I mean, even without that, like I said, the detectives are just standing around reacting to stuff the killer is doing instead of actually doing things for themselves. So the movie has a lot of issues. The acting, Chris Rock. So Chris Rock is, of course, a famous comedian. You might be surprised to hear this, but I honestly had never heard of Chris Rock before I heard he was going to be in this movie. I don't watch stand-up. Really, comedy is just not really my thing. I don't watch stand-up. I don't watch comedians. So this was the first time I've heard of Chris Rock. So I know a lot of people are having trouble separating this comedian. Because I'm just saying, I have no frame of reference for Chris Rock. So going into this movie, I had no bias. But I understand if you're used to watching Chris Rock do stand-up and used to laughing at him, going into this movie, it might be difficult to take him seriously when he tries to go for the more dramatic stuff. But don't get me wrong, there are a few scenes where I don't know, there's a few shaky scenes. For example, early in the movie, he goes into a bathroom with Angie, his captain, his superior, and he's basically saying to her, I want to take this copycat case. You gotta let me lead this case. You know, I have to be the one in charge here. And when he's doing it, he's trying to be really intense. He's basically staring into her eyes and trying to get really wide-eyed as if he's giving her this really intense, passionate gaze. And, you know, there's a little moments like that where he doesn't quite hit the mark. But honestly, for the most part, I think he was doing a pretty good job. Don't get me wrong, there's room for improvement. But for the most part, I was really with him. I was really enjoying his performance. Max Mangilla, who plays the rookie partner, I thought he was great. Like I said, I really liked his relationship with Chris Rock. They bounced off each other really nicely. There was great chemistry there. Yeah, he did a good job, though, Max Mangilla. Samuel Jackson, of course, is in the movie. And, well, Samuel Jackson in a Saw movie. I never thought I could ever say that. And, as you would probably expect, he's not in the movie long. I would say less than 10 minutes of screen time. And he's great in the movie, of course. Samuel Jackson is a solid performer. He plays the Zeke's father, Chris Rock's father. He was the police chief. He's the ex-police chief of the department that Chris Rock works at. So he's retired in the movie, but he kind of gets pulled into the investigation. I guess that's all I should really say. But he does a great job. Unfortunately, he's not in the movie long. And the movie needed more scenes with his character, not just because it's Samuel Jackson and everyone loves Samuel Jackson, but also because I guess I can't really go into specifics without giving away spoilers, but basically his character, because his character does have a pivotal role, but the pivotal stuff with his character, it doesn't really feel impactful because he's barely in the movie. His character doesn't really get much development at all. He's just, I'm really loud, shouty ex-police chief, you know. You see a few flashbacks with him when he was the police chief, where he's yelling, you know, where there's some drama going on with him when he was the police chief. But you just don't really get a feel for his character at all. Samuel Jackson is fun to watch, of course, but he's basically just playing himself. You don't really get a feel for the character that he's supposed to be playing. So every single time he's on screen, you're basically seeing Samuel Jackson, not the character Marcus, who is the name of his character. So when you get to certain pivotal scenes with his character, there isn't much of an impact because you don't really know this character anyway. You're like, this is Samuel Jackson. I'm not really... So when the impactful story stuff happens with the character in pivotal scenes, it kind of falls flat, to be honest. So he's not in the movie much, and he really needed to be in it more. Again, not just because he's Samuel Jackson, and we all love Samuel Jackson. It's just the character. The character needed more screen time, more development. You know, I can't really go into too much without giving everything away. But I'll leave it at that. Even the supporting actors actually do a good job as well. Unfortunately, the only developed character really is the Chris Rock character. William gets a little bit of development as well, I guess, Chris Rock's partner. But Zeke is obviously the main character, and he gets the most development throughout the movie. So he's really the only one who feels like a fully fleshed out character. While all of these supporting characters, they are played by good actors who I think they do a good job at expressing. I'm not sure. They have some good nuances in their performances, even though they are only in the movie as supporting characters. It's like the actors that they cast to play the supporting characters, they managed to bring more character to their characters, even though the script didn't have a chance to really explore those characters. They're basically kind of just faceless police officers walking around in the background. They aren't really characters. They're kind of just there, you know. But the actors that they cast for these background characters, essentially background characters, they were good though. Where maybe I'm reading too much into their performances, but I don't know. I felt like they had more nuance in kind of the facial expressions and the looks they would give each other, where you felt there was more going on with those characters than the script actually got a chance to explore. And that's a problem. If you like the movie's 90 minutes long, so I feel as if this would have benefited a lot more if it was longer. Because, like I said, the movie goes into hyperactive mode in the second half, where everything's very quick, fast, rapid fire. We needed more quiet time, so the movie needed to be longer, 2 hours long. But again, Lionsgate or Twisted Pictures, whoever's responsible, they mandate that the Saw movies have to be around 90 minutes long, so they can fit more screenings at the theaters every day for more money. That's unfortunate, but the movie did need to be a lot longer. And so the killer is targeting corrupt cops in this one. Jigsaw did that as well, but I mean exclusively corrupt cops, you know. Jigsaw targeted corrupt cops every now and again because, you know, he targets people who either don't appreciate their life or people who hurt other people. So that's when Jigsaw would end up targeting cops if they were corrupt, or on most cases at least. Obviously, when Hoffman took over, he would target perfectly fine, you know, you know, good cops. Hoffman would target good cops, but Jigsaw, he would only target corrupt cops. But you know, the point is, this killer, he's only targeting corrupt cops. Corrupt cops are just happen to fall under Jigsaw's kind of you know, what you need to do to become a Jigsaw target. But this guy is specifically targeting the corrupt cops. So I don't know. I don't want to get I won't get political, but obviously there's Chris Rock has said that he came up with the idea for this movie before all of the, you know, all the stuff happened recently. So he wasn't trying to make a political statement, I don't think, with this movie. It's just kind of something, a coincidence that he came up with this. But if you want to kind of touch on like police brutality and stuff like that, I mean, I'm fine with you doing it. I mean, I would prefer my Saw movies not to be political, but the movie kind of brings it up, but it doesn't really do anything with it. Where most of the cops in the department are corrupt, and that's why they all hate Chris Rock's character, because Chris Rock's ex-partner killed someone, and he snitched on him. So, you know, Chris Rock was a detective trying to do the right thing by snitching on his partner, and now everybody else hates Chris Rock because he snitched on one of their own. But so most of these cops in the department are corrupt, but the movie doesn't really explore kind of that side of things, or it's just really shallow. For example, what if, you know, there's a person behind the actions of something evil? Like, if somebody does something evil, there's still a person behind those evil actions. So I feel as if it would have been interesting if we could at least explore kind of these other characters, the supporting characters. Sure, they've done like corrupt things, like murdering innocent people, but what if we explored kind of what brought them to that point? Instead, you're kind of just left to assume that all of these cops are mustache twirling supervillains who laugh maniacally as they gun down unarmed suspects. Why not explore kind of what brought these people to that point? Like, maybe they joined the police force initially hoping they could make a difference, right? And then somewhere along the way, they just got jaded. They got jaded and cold. And like, what brought them to the point where they felt like it was okay for them to do what they did? But the movie doesn't really explore anything like that. And the thing is, There's a point of the movie that I feel was a perfect opportunity to explore that, but they never did. And I feel like in my head, I'm constantly like trying to rearrange things that happened in the movie to try and make a better movie. But the thing is, hindsight is 2020. When a movie is made, it's easy to kind of see what went wrong, and when you have the big picture, it's easy to see what went wrong when you have the finished product. So maybe these kind of issues wouldn't be so obvious when they were making the movie, but there's stuff like this where I'm constantly thinking, oh, you could have moved this to this, you could have done this and this, and it would have been so much better. But again, there is a point in this movie where if they had changed something, you would have had a perfect opportunity to have this tender moment where somebody's kind of reflecting on what they did, or when there was an opportunity for a corrupt cop to kind of reflect on what he did, and you could kind of have a conversation of what led him to become what he is. There was an opportunity for that, and I will describe what I mean in the spoiler section, but just they never really delved into the police corruption stuff in an interesting way. It was all kept very shallow and one-dimensional. But there were opportunities to do it. They never bothered. They never took it. And maybe they felt like I said, the movie's only 90 minutes long, so they gotta cram everything into 90 minutes. So maybe they felt like it wasn't worth the wasting the running time to actually delve into that kind of stuff. But it's a missed opportunity. It's a shame. I'll go more into it in the spoiler section. So let's move on. So okay, I'm not sure. This kind of ties into two things. Where I'm going to talk about the structure of certain scenes as well as the killer. I'm not going to spoil anything yet. I'll talk about him specifically in the spoiler section, but this isn't original to say, but everyone says this. Everyone, this is a very popular opinion, but who the killer turns out to be is very obvious. It's probably the most obvious twist in the entire... Aside from Saw 5, this is the most obvious twist in the entire series. And even then, I see a lot of people who love this movie trying to say that who the killer turns out to be is not the twist. The twist is a little something that happens later. I disagree with that. I can't really go into it without... I'll talk specifically in the spoiler section of the review, but... For now, I will just say I think the twist of the movie is who the killer is. I disagree with people saying what comes after is the twist, and I will again clarify later my thoughts on that. But who the killer is very predictable. But here's the thing: I'm not really bothered about the reveal of the killer being predictable. I don't really mind that. The twist of the movie being really obvious and predictable is not end all, it's not the end all be all of the movie. The movie just, the movie has other merits. It's not a big problem. The thing is, I ultimately think even with the predictable twist, the movie kind of falls flat because of the things I'm talking about. The second half of the movie not having real detective work, like the second half of the movie being directionless, where the detectives are just standing around doing nothing while the killer does stuff, instead of having a movie where your protagonists are actually doing things. Instead, they are just standing around reacting to stuff the killer does. But yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with the twist being predictable, as long as the rest of the movie was good, which it wasn't. It kind of fell flat. But what I will say about the twist is I appreciate when a murder mystery can be figured out. I prefer it. I would prefer it if, like, it's better than kind of just pulling something out of your ass and saying, look, this person was the killer, even though there was no clue. There weren't any clues to that person being the killer. For example, the Scream movies. There's no real way to work out who the killer is in any of the Scream movies because everyone is a suspect. There's normally 2 killers in Scream, so you can't eliminate suspects using alibis. And not only that, there are so many red herrings in every Scream movie. There's no way for you to tell who's the, you can't eliminate a red herring from the suspect list. So you're kind of, if you guess correctly who the killer is in Scream, it's not because you did any detective work yourself. You just took a guess, and you happened to be right. So with this movie, yes, it's obvious who the killer is, but at the same time, I appreciate the fact that there were actual clues to who the killer was. So when you get the reveal, it's not bullshit. That's what I'm saying. I would rather it be predictable than it's just be bullshit, and for you to have no chance of figuring out who the killer is. So again, the reveal of who the killer is obvious, but that's not my problem with the movie. Like, a lot of people find that to be a big problem, I know. I don't really care. I don't mind. It's not an issue with me. My issue with the killer, though, is the killer is just really one-dimensional, and there's not really anything to the killer. Of course, I don't want to give anything away yet. I'll wait until the spoiler section, but John Kramer had a really fun, cool motive. The whole, the cancer diagnosis, and they appreciate your life trick. That was great. Really creative, and I understand that's really hard to top, and I didn't expect them to be able to top it. But I was expecting them to try and come up with a cool, creative, a killer with a really interesting backstory and an interesting agenda, an interesting objective. But basically, what you are led to believe is the killer's motive. And there's nothing else to it. And even when you find out the killer's backstory, it's something you've seen a million times before. It's just really cliche, really generic. It's just really bland. And the thing is, the person who plays the killer, they do a great job. The killer's backstory and motivation is pretty boring and uninteresting, but despite all of that, the person who plays the killer actually did a great job. The performance is actually really good, and it's a breath of fresh air compared to Hoffman or Logan, where they were the killers. They were revealed to be the killers in Saw 4 and Saw 8. So, and when they were revealed, the actors, Costas Mandylor and Matt Passmore, they got really monotone and stoic. Like, as if sounding emotionless and monotone would make them sound really scary, like a horror movie villain. But it kind of came across as bland and boring in those movies. But the performance here is great, where when you find out who the killer is, the actor doesn't suddenly try to put on a gruff, raspy horror movie voice. The person playing the killer just acts like a normal person, And but I appreciated that. I appreciated how different this killer came across in that respect compared to Logan and Hoffman. Unfortunately, compared to Hoffman and Logan, this killer basically has a... I can't. I'll be giving away too much. I'll just say, performance-wise, this killer is different to Hoffman and Logan. But when it comes... Oh, I don't know. I can't. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to give away too much. But I'll just say, the killer's backstory I thought was really boring. I'm struggling to see... Oh, well, okay. I'm going to give away... I can't. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to elaborate more in the spoiler section, okay? I'm just saying, the killer's backstory, and when you find out his backstory and his goal, it's just kind of boring. There's not really anything to it. And again, I will elaborate more in the spoiler section. But at least the person playing the killer gave a good performance, despite the bland material he was working with. I'll give them that. So, moving on. What we got? The structure. Yeah, so they do this weird thing with how they order a scene or two in this movie, where I can't really explain it again without going into spoilers. I'll explain it later in depth, but they order... Oh, I can't really explain it. Basically, they order certain scenes in the movie in a really bizarre way, which could come across really confusing to a lot of people. I mean, I picked up on what was happening because I knew who the killer was pretty much straight away. Well, the fans pretty much figured out who the killer was from the trailers, so we were analyzing all of the trailers and the interviews and everything. So when the second trailer dropped, we already knew who the killer was, even down to the backstory. So I was always paying attention to certain characters throughout the movie, since I already figured who the killer would be. But I think to try and hide who the killer was, they do this really weird thing with two scenes. They basically, I can't, again, I'll explain specifically. I'm sure I'm not making sense right now. But they basically order two scenes in a really strange way, which it's bizarre, but they specifically, it seems as if they specifically did it to try and hide the twist, which was pretty obvious anyway. But it was, when the movie was over, I was like, why did they rearrange these two scenes in this specific way? It just came across as really awkward and bizarre. I'll get into it later. And speaking of the structure, I guess, they occasionally just play these flashbacks that show what some certain cops have done in the past, like what Samuel Jackson has done in the past when he was the police chief, the chief of police, and what other characters did. I don't know. Sometimes the flashbacks seem to come out of nowhere, where the flashbacks seem to be triggered at really inappropriate times. Like, for example, a character has just died in a trap, and then after that character has died in a trap, we'll get a flashback to what that character did years ago. And well, the character's dead now. I don't really care what that character did. What does this matter? You know, what does this matter in the grand scheme of things? So there were kind of some strange choices with when they played certain flashbacks. And again, I will specify in the spoiler section, but there was a moment to play when a character dies in a trap and they play the flashback of that character doing something in the past. There would have been an appropriate time to play that flashback if they played the movie slightly differently. I'll specify what I mean later. Okay, so let's get to what we all want out of a Saw movie. Okay, so I just had a glass of water, so I'm ready to continue on. Been recording for about 40 minutes now. I wouldn't be surprised if I kept going on for an hour and 30 minutes. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff that we've all been waiting for. The traps. So when I heard that Downton Bousman was coming back to direct, I was a little bit scared because Downton Bousman directed Saw 2, 3, and 4. I love Saw 2, of course, but honestly, one thing about the Saw movies that I really, really dislike, this might be weird hearing a fan say this, but what I really hate about the Saw movies is the editing in doing the traps. If you've seen, obviously, you know what I'm talking about, the kind of, the fast motion, kind of, the flash frames, how the camera will often rotate around the victim at 50 miles per hour. How, you know, the editing and the directing is often really hyperactive in the traps. You know, there's that very kind of distinct Saw style, right? And I've always hated it. It might be weird hearing a fan say that, but I've always hated the Saw editing. And I know James Wan only used that kind of, he invented that kind of editing doing the first movie because they didn't have enough footage to work with. So the only way they could edit the traps in any, and the movie in any coherent sense was to invent that editing. And then the sequels ended up using that just because it was the style at that point. So it was more of a, you know, the Saw movies ended up having that style more of a, out of necessity rather than an artistic reason. And I just never liked it. I've always hated it. So hearing that Downton Bousman was coming back to direct a new Saw movie, I was worried that, oh shit. This in Jigsaw, I liked how the traps were directed in Jigsaw, where we had the Spierig brothers, not sure how you pronounce that, but they ditched the Saw style, and you know, the traps were relying on the talent of the filmmaking, of the filmmakers, rather than obnoxious, gimmicky editing. And so I was worried when I heard Downton Bousman was coming back. I was worried, I was thinking, oh shit, all of the traps are going to have this editing now, after Jigsaw abandoned it. But no, well, it has it a little bit, but it's really dialed back. Going into this, I heard that all of the traps were hyperactive, like the original movies. So I was really kind of scared going into this. But no, the traps, we do get the kind of fast motion, kind of rotating every now and again, but it's very rare. It doesn't happen anywhere near as often as it did in the original movies. So I'm really glad that the editing, no, I liked how the traps were directed in this. I was scared because Bousman was coming back, but I'm glad. I'm glad that the traps for the most part are filmed like a normal movie. They aren't relying on the obnoxious gimmick of the traditional Saw editing. Again, I think a lot of people, a lot of Saw fans would probably prefer the editing, but personally, I would rather it just not be there entirely. But I'm glad it was dialed back. So one of the really polarizing thing about the Traps here is the new voice. Of course, it's a Jigsaw copycat. It's non-apprentice anymore. So they aren't using Tobin Bell's voice for the Traps. Instead, they never specified it in the movie. I've always assumed that ever since I heard this voice in the trailer, I've always assumed that it was a text-to-speech thing. And I still think it is, but I don't know, it's weird. They never ever address this in the movie. At no point during the movie do any of the characters say, oh, so is that a text-to-speech voice? No one ever brings it up in the movie, but I've always assumed that. But the thing is, this new voice, so Tobin Bell has a badass voice, of course. It's a typical, scary, sinister horror movie voice. It's exactly what you would expect Jigsaw to sound like, It's exactly what you would expect somebody as deranged as this to sound like. It's a very typical Hollywood horror movie voice. I don't mean that as an insult. It's great, of course. It's iconic as hell. Everybody loves Tobin Bell's voice. It's iconic. So, with this movie, they went with something drastically different. I mean, by the way, I'm glad they stopped using Tobin Bell's voice. Don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful to him for being so loyal to the series. Coming back year after year after year. Bless him for doing that. But it is time to move on. And it's time for a new voice in the Traps. So this new voice is so polarizing. A lot of people think it's hilarious. A lot of people think it sounds comical. Some people say it sounds like Kermit from the Muppets. Some people say it sounds like Adam Driver on Helium. And I would not disagree. Those are actually very accurate descriptions of the voice. But you know what? I actually really loved this voice. I thought it was really great. Again, I'm not sure if it's text-to-speech or what. I don't think... Because when you find out who the killer is, I don't think that this voice is actually their voice. Obviously, this voice has been distorted for the tapes, but even with the distortion, I don't think it is who you find out the killer is. I'm pretty sure it's a text-to-speech program, but I kind of like that because when you hear the voice in the tapes, there's no emotion behind it. It just... Because when Tobin Bell speaks in the original movies on doing the Traps, it sounds like somebody trying to sound like a scary horror movie voice. But when you hear this voice, it's not somebody trying to sound scary. It's kind of just this matter-of-fact voice. It's like this voice doesn't... This voice doesn't... It's not like this voice is trying to compensate for having a small penis or anything like that. This voice doesn't care about sounding scary because what's about to happen to you will speak louder than words ever could. So I really like the voice. It's not at all what you would ever expect a voice in a saw, the person giving you the instructions in a saw trap. It's not at all what you would expect a voice to sound like. But, they went with something very different. And again, I understand why so many people have problems with it. There's a lot of people who think it sounds awful, but I really liked it. It's just kind of, it sounds so, just so inhuman and just emotionless. It sounds so broken. It has that kind of, that broken kind of text-to-speech kind of vibe, where it just sounds so unnatural, but that's what kind of worked for me. And I don't know, to me, I thought the voice was really creepy. I really liked it. Again, it's very polarizing, and I understand why people don't like it, but I thought the voice was great. I was really happy that they went with something so daring. They could have just gone with another generic spooky horror movie voice. It probably wouldn't live up to Tobin Bell, but they could have just come up with another, generic horror movie voice. But no, they went with something completely out of left field, and I think it worked. I really liked it. The trap tapes, the dialogue in the trap tapes when, the killer is telling the person what they have to do to get out and everything. I appreciated that the tapes in this one were a bit more direct. One problem I had with the Jigsaw tapes in the original series is that they tended to get really rambly, really pretentious. When John Kramer would explain to the victims why they are there, he would often go on these really lengthy, pretentious, philosophical rants. Okay, I had an interruption there, but as I was saying, in the original series, Jigsaw would go on these really lengthy, overly pretentious, rambly speeches. So the tapes tended they tended to go on for a lot longer than they needed to. Where you would basically be sitting there listening to this thing, wondering to yourself, "Oh, come on, get to the fucking point already," you know. That's something I liked about the Saw 8 Jigsaw, where I felt as if the tapes were a lot more condensed, a lot more concise, and more to the point, instead of rambling on for hours and hours and being overly pretentious. So that's something I liked about the tapes in this movie as well, where it felt as if they were a lot more to the point, and they didn't waste too much time with the tapes when the victims were in the traps. They got to the point a lot quicker, which I appreciated. The one thing I didn't like about the tapes was it sometimes came across as kind of juvenile with how how the dialogue and the tapes would kind of try to link the victim to the traps, where sometimes the killer would use these really awful puns, and it just came across as really kind of I don't know, sometimes childish. I'm not sure if that was the point to get the point across that the killer is so screwed in the head that maybe the killer is kind of childish. I don't know, but I don't think that was actually the point. I'm making excuses for them here, but it's like the way they kept trying to link the victims to the traps specifically was kind of it came across as really hokey. It's like you've done nothing but lie with your tongue, so now rip it off. You used your fingers to pull the trigger on an unarmed suspect, so now you must rip off your fingers. It was stuff like that where it was, I don't know, it just, the way they were wording it in the tapes, it kind of felt, it just came across as really juvenile, I guess, with how they were trying to do it. And I swear, there's a trap involving shattered glass, and I don't remember the exact wording, but I swear to God, this is a line in the tape. It's something along the lines of, so the trap involves shattered glass, and then I swear there's a line in the tape that says something along the lines of, your career shattered like broken glass. Give me a break. That was bad. The traps in general, though, honestly, they were kind of hit or miss. This movie, you can see that this movie really was trying not to be too much about the traps, which is fine, I appreciate that, but they were kind of hit or miss, though. Without like describing them, how can I guess I shouldn't just give them away till we get the spoilers. But I'll say this: the first two traps of the movie are pretty good. Oh well, actually, not just pretty good. I'll say this: the first trap is pretty good. The second trap, which is the finger trap, I'll call it, was awesome. I've easily the best trap in the entire movie. And not only that, I would call it one of the best traps in the entire series. If I were to do a top 10 Saw traps, the finger trap would be in it, honestly. And I'm not just saying this because I've been in my own finger trap, but it really was a badass trap. I really liked that one. So the first two traps, and it's funny because the first two traps are really basic. If I were to describe the first two traps, on paper they sound so basic and generic. You would just think, oh yeah, that's a typical Saw movie. I mean, it's fine, but yeah, those are typical Saw traps. It's what I would expect. But the way they were executed is like these really kind of generic concepts that you would expect out of Saw. But the way they were executed it kind of elevated such generic ideas to something so much more. I don't know. I'm not sure how much I should give away here. Like the finger trap. Let's go into the finger trap for a second. So, I guess I won't describe. I'll describe it a little bit, but not all of it. Where the traps have basically become our lovable mascots to the point where it's nearly impossible for anybody to find the traps scary or disturbing at this point. They are just these kind of really fun set pieces that we all love. Our lovable mascots, you could call them. It's like when you watch the first Saw movie back in 2004, 2005, the traps were scary. When Paul wakes up in the back of the razor wire maze, you're like, oh my god, imagine being in that. That would be awful, And the reverse bear trap, of course, the classic trap. That was scary back in the day. When I first saw that, I was thinking, that really freaked me out. I was thinking, oh shit, that's really intense. But of course, as the series goes on, the reverse page, obviously, when you get more exposed to something, it becomes less and less scary. So the saw traps lost their, I'm not sure what you would call it, their intensity, I guess, very early on, to the point where they just became our lovable, fun set pieces that we all love. So it kind of gets to the point where whenever there's a trap on screen, you're basically cheering. You're like, oh yeah, come on, let's see someone get their head ripped off, let's go. And so, as the series went on, it's kind of like the reverse bear trap went from, oh man, that's scary as hell, I wouldn't want that on my head. It went from that to, that's our reverse bear trap. That's our lovable reverse bear trap. This finger trap kind of brought me back to that kind of scary feeling that the traps had back in the first movie, where I'm not sure, it's the way it was filmed, and it's just, I don't know, it's the way it looked and the way it was filmed, which it kind of brought me back to that kind of Saw 1 feeling where the trap was scary. Like when the guy first woke up in that thing, it kind of gave you that sinking feeling, or at least it did for me. It gave me this sinking feeling in my stomach where it was scary. It kind of gave me this sense of dread where, and it was very, I loved the way it was filmed as well. This trap, because on paper it's such a generic kind of idea what the trap is, but the way they played it out and the way it looked, it just, it was really something. It was like a great kind of, it was a great scene. Just the guy waking up in this tub of water, he has this thing locked on his head, it's kind of like a cage locked onto his head, and all of his fingers are attached to these wires. So there's wires feeding into a machine, and all of the wires are netted around each of his fingers. So he wakes up and he's like, what the, what is this? And as he's kind of moving his hands up and kind of looking at what the hell is, what is he hooked up to? All of the wires which are feeding into the machine, they are kind of, gracefully kind of flowing through the air. So as he's moving his hands about, all of the wires coming off his fingers are kind of, gliding across the air as he's moving his hands up and down. It's just a really cool looking scene, and it's just the way that whole entire trap was staged and lit and shot. It was a really, really good scene. And there's a great wide shot of that trap as well, where the camera is really far back and you can kind of see the emptiness and the scope of the warehouse, where in the middle it's the guy in the trap, and then you look around and it's kind of just this empty, dark warehouse where it kind of hammers home that this guy is alone with nothing but the machine, that there's no one there to help him, and it's, you face the machine or you die, So it kind of brought me back to those kind of Saw 1 feelings where that trap was really scary, just seeing him wake up in that thing. They did a really good job with that. And the actor in this trap did a fantastic job as well. When he was screaming in pain, it wasn't the typical Hollywood scream. It was this... It was like this really guttural scream. You know when people scream in pain in movies, and even the Saw movies, it tends to be these really pretty screams. But this guy, when he was screaming, it was, it wasn't your Hollywood screaming. It felt real, It felt real and raw. It was these really kind of nasty guttural sounds he was making when he was kind of just moaning in pain. So the actor in that scene did a fantastic job, by the way. Seriously. Obviously, the Oscars don't go to movies like this, but that guy, damn, he did a damn good job. Props to him. The effects were, of course, pretty damn good as well. Those were some very good effects. But the strange thing about this trap, so this finger trap is great trap. They did something really strange with it, where I just don't see why they felt it was necessary. So what happens is, the guy wakes up in the trap, the TV comes on, I want to play a game. We immediately cut to the police elsewhere, going about their business. So you don't even see the rest of the trap here. You hear, I want to play a game on the TV, then we cut away. And then about 5 to 10 minutes later, the police find out that trap happened. And at this point, they ruin whether or not the guy survived the trap. And then they show you the rest of the trap. So after ruining the outcome for you and removing any suspense and tension, now they flash back to show you what the guy had to do to, they show you the rest of the trap. Why? Why not just... So, you showed the guy waking up, the TV coming on, you hear, I want to play a game. We cut to the police. Both the police and we, the audience, learn whether or not the guy survived the trap. And then they flash back to show the rest of the trap happening. I don't understand the merit in this. Why remove the suspense and tension? Why not let us see the trap happen in its entirety from the first place? Why ruin that? I've thought about this for a while, and I don't understand the logic behind this, why they bothered to do this. I mean, I knew the outcome of the trap anyway, because I was following the movie so closely, and I was watching I was watching everything they released about the movie like a hawk, so I already know if the guy would survive or not. But as for, general audiences, why ruin it for them? It's just strange. Why not show the trap in its entirety from the beginning? That was a weird one. Unfortunately, so the first two traps of the movie, you got the finger trap, the train trap. Both are good, especially the finger trap. I thought that was excellent. But this is where the traps, unfortunately, in my opinion, go downhill. I won't give them away. I'll specifically say what I didn't like about them in the spoiler section, but these other traps, okay, there's some other traps, okay, but there's two of them which, in concept, I think are great. They are great ideas, but they didn't execute them well. Great ideas, great concept, but I can't explain why without giving them away, without going into spoilers, but they were poorly executed. I'm talking about... Well, I don't... yeah, I'll be giving away too much. I'll talk about it in the spoiler section. But I'll say specifically, the very final trap of the movie, I thought was a great idea, but it hurts because it's such a good idea, but it falls flat on its face, and it's a great idea for a trap, but they didn't pull it off, in my opinion. And there's a trap involving shattered glass that I absolutely hated. I thought it was a complete dud, both in concept and execution. I'll talk about it later, but there's the glass trap or whatever we want to call it. That trap was a dud. That trap sucked. Whoa. Oh man, I hated that trap. I thought that trap was stupid. I really didn't like it. Okay, I'm done with the traps, talking about them. It's just, they are kind of hit or miss, unfortunately. I like the first two traps, especially the finger trap, but the rest of them, they tend to have good concepts, the rest of them, but they don't quite land the execution, which is a shame. The Charlie Clouser music is, honestly, I hate to say this about Charlie Clouser, but I didn't really notice the music throughout the movie. Of course, you get your Hello Zap at the very end of the movie. They played the laser collar music from Jigsaw at one point, which is a good piece of music, by the way. And they also nostalgia bait you with music from Tap's apartment in 1. When, this is in the trailer, but when a certain character picks up a hacksaw, he plays he nostalgia baits you with a familiar piece of music from Saw 1 during that moment. But yeah, I'm not saying it was bad. I don't mean the bad mouth Charlie Clouser. Of course, we all love him, but the only time an original piece of music in this movie really perked, I actually kind of noticed it, was doing a trap, which, I don't know, is there a spoiler just to say what the name of the trap is? The wax trap, I'll just say that. Doing that trap had some good music, but that was really the only time I really noticed the music playing in the movie, to tell you the truth, aside from when he used music from previous movies. But, I'm not saying Charlie Clouser's score was bad. It wasn't bad, it's just, I didn't really notice it, to tell you the truth. It's a shame. I think I'm coming to the end here, though, of the non-spoiler section of the review. It's just, Spiral, it's fine as another kind of messy Saw movie, but I wanted it to be more than that, and it really needed to be more than that, because this is supposed to, they want this to be the foundation for a new string of sequels, and obviously, if you want to make a new string of sequels, that first movie better be good. And this movie is filled with great ideas, but they just don't really properly expand on those ideas, I guess, or they don't properly execute them. And there were ways they could have properly executed a lot of this stuff. It's just didn't quite work. Like I said, the first 30 minutes of the movie-ish are really good. The detectives are actually doing detective work. The character stuff is strong, but it goes downhill after that. Basically, a little while after the finger trap is when everything starts to go downhill. I mean, it hurts to say, but it is what it is. So again, the big problems with the movie are, in my opinion, it's just the detective work tends to just come to a dead stop about 30 minutes into the movie. And Chris Rock, his character, Zeke, is really the only character who's really fleshed out. William is a little bit as well, his rookie partner, but aside from that, there's not really much going on with the other characters. And Samuel Jackson's character really needed to be developed more because he does play a pivotal role in the movie. I don't know. I guess he wasn't in more scenes because Samuel Jackson is so expensive. I guess. I'm sure every second they were on screen, there was a sweaty producer behind the camera checking his watch. You know, for every second Samuel Jackson is on screen, this budget is going up. You know, so I felt as if every time Samuel Jackson was on screen, as soon as they yelled cut, they were like, "Get him off the set! Get him off the set! We're gonna go bankrupt if he's on set for 10 more seconds. Get him off." So, yeah, it's just... Again, should we go into spoilers? I'm going to go into spoilers here. Would I recommend Spiral? If you need to ask, would you recommend seeing it? I would say no. Because, if you're a Saw fan, you'll watch it regardless. You've already seen it. I've already seen it 3 times, despite my problems with it. I'll probably end up watching it 5 times in total. I did for Jigsaw, so might as well match that. I enjoy it as a kind of silly Saw movie, but I wanted this to be a really good Saw movie, and it had the potential there. That's the thing with Jigsaw. Jigsaw in concept is just, why did you bother making this movie? Saw 8, Jigsaw. You kind of just wonder, why did you even bother? Because this movie is just another Saw movie. There's nothing. It's like you let the franchise lay dormant for 7 years. Then you came back with this reboot. Okay, what cool new direction do you have here? Oh, nothing. It's another Saw movie. By the numbers, beat for beat. That was just a generic Saw movie. It's like they never stopped making them. That could have come out after Saw 7 back in 2011, and everybody would have been, nobody would have noticed. They're like, oh yeah, it's another Saw movie. But Spiral, it has good, it has the groundwork for a great movie. It's just, it wasn't really properly realized, unfortunately. I'm going to go into spoilers here, so you've had your warning. I'm about to give everything away. I'm about to give away who the killer is. I'm about to ruin all of the traps. I'm about to ruin the ending. So you've had your warning to get the leave. Okay, so let's begin. Had your warning. 3, 2, 1. So the killer is... Had your warning. Alright. The killer turns out to be Chris Rock's rookie partner, William, played by Max Bengilla. So, what's the backstory here? Oh, by the way, like I said, I was saying earlier, I really like the buddy cop stuff between Chris Rock and Max Bengilla, between Zeke and William. I really like watching their relationship develop. So, of course, William turns out to be the killer at the end, but halfway through the movie, William disappears from the movie. Basically, Defoe is not really Defoe the character sent off him. It's more about us, the audience. Defoe the audience sent off of William to stop us from suspecting him because it is so obvious. William fakes his death halfway through the movie. So William disappears for half of the movie until, he comes back at the very end when they reveal he is the killer. But William disappears halfway through the movie. So the stuff I was really enjoying for the first half of the movie, the relationship between William and Zeke, that's gone. So that's another reason why I was not feeling the second half of this movie, because sure, the detective stuff basically comes to a dead stop, but at least we could have had the relationship, William and Chris Rock interacting with each other. but they aren't because William is out of the movie at that point. Not too long after the finger trap, about 30 minutes into the movie, not too long after that, William fakes his death. So he's gone. He's gone for the rest of the movie until the final act. So we don't get that really, that bromance, which I was really enjoying for the first half. I also wish that William just wasn't the killer. I wish that they did a Seven thing where the killer turns out to be some random character you've never seen before. I would have preferred something like that. Because in the sequels, I think if they do end up making sequels to this, I think the relationship between Chris Rock and between Zeke and William, I think that could have been a really cool thing. A little bromance to watch, brew over the sequels. But nope. William turned out to be the killer, and I found William more interesting just as the rookie detective than as the killer. And that's because, just like I said before, the killer's backstory is it's just really boring. Okay, so the killer's backstory. Zeke's ex-partner shot and killed a witness. He was a corrupt cop who shot and killed a witness. And Zeke, of course, snitched on him. So this witness that Zeke's partner shot and killed is the father of the killer, of William. So William, as a child, watched a corrupt cop kill his father. So it's the tired, old cliche we've seen a million times before of, I'm traumatized because I watched my family member get killed when I was a kid. That's our new Saw villain. And yeah, John Kramer lost his child, of course. But the thing is, John Kramer lost his unborn baby, but that was just one layer to his descent to madness. And that wasn't even the true catalyst. There's more to the John Kramer character than I'm mad because somebody killed my baby. Like, the cancer diagnosis was the true catalyst for John Kramer becoming who he was. But with William, there is nothing beyond, I'm mad because a corrupt cop killed my dad. Don't get me wrong, I understand why he's mad, but I mean, that's it. That's our villain. Maybe a sequel will surprise me and say, oh no, there's more to the William character than you actually realize, but so far this is it. This is the baddie who's going to be carrying the next few Saw movies. I would love for you to prove me wrong and show me how interesting he is, but so far I'm not impressed. And what he's trying to accomplish is basically, it's exactly what you are led to believe throughout the movie. He just wants to kill corrupt cops, or at least put them in traps. He just wants to torture corrupt cops, and that's it. That's really it. John Kramer's motivation was agenda was a lot more robust, so there was potential for more interesting scenarios with John Kramer, but with William, I'm really struggling to see where they can take things from here if they want to make more sequels. I just don't really see where to go from here. Is William just going to keep creating more traps, I guess? He's just going to keep putting more police in traps, and okay, that's our franchise. That's our series. Okay. I don't know. I mean, that's it. I wish they'd come up with a more interesting backstory, or at least a better agenda than just, I'm going to torture corrupt cops. I wish they'd come up with something more interesting than that. So, how should I go? Let's go for the movie kind of from the beginning, I guess. Let's talk about the detective work. So, the detective work in the first half of the movie, I was kind of into, but like I said, when you get to the second half of the movie, it kind of comes to a dead stop, and it becomes the cops standing around reacting to the killer doing things instead of doing things themselves. So in the first half of the movie, they're basically trying to, they are doing actual detective work. Someone is killed in an opening trap with a train. The cops are like, they're trying to track down the victim's last whereabouts. They're trying to track down CCTV footage. They're trying to figure out You know, what was he with somebody before he disappeared? Stuff like that. They are making progress. They're going to local businesses, trying to get CCTV footage, and you know they're trying to they're trying to track down somebody. They're trying to track down a suspect. The cops are actually doing something. The first 30 minutes of the movie ish. Then you get to the second half, and that shit stops. So the suspect, because the killer basically uses some hobo meth head to bait the open-in kill victim into the subway tunnels so he can be put into the trap. So the cops, you know, they're checking CCTV footage. They eventually learn, oh, they're like, oh yeah, it's that hobo meth head. We know who that is. We need to track that guy down. So it kind of becomes this. They're trying to track down. They're doing detective work to try and track down the meth head, but that's basically a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere. They do detective work to try and find him, but it doesn't go anywhere. It just comes to a dead end. So the cops say, I don't know what to do anymore. I guess we'll just sit back and wait and see what happens. And that's the rest of the movie. There's not really a direction. The movie is just nothing. It's just, it feels like a scene of random scenes just happening with nothing leads into anything. It's just things happen. The movie. That's it. Again, specifically, the cops are in the police department. They receive a parcel from the killer, which basically says, come to the butcher shop. So they go to the butcher shop. They go back to the police department. The killer attacks somebody in Chinatown. So they go to Chinatown to see to see what happens. The killer puts someone in a trap. Oh, let's go save the person from the trap. I'm basically describing everything that happens in the second half of the movie. The police, the detectives aren't doing anything. You know, they aren't moving the plot forward themselves. They are just standing around like lemons, reacting to stuff the killer does. It's not exactly riveting cinema, I guess, when your protagonists are doing nothing but reacting to what the killer is doing instead of making an effort to try and track him down themselves. And I know you're like, oh, well, the killer was so smart they have nothing to go off of. Well, you shouldn't be writing the movie like that. You should be writing the movie so our heroes have something to do other than standing around like lemons waiting for the killer to do something. So yeah, the detective stuff was really disappointing in that regard, because when you're watching the first 30 minutes of the movie and they are trying to track down the meth head, you are under this illusion, this lie. It's actually a lie, but you are under this illusion that this is building up to something, that this will actually lead them into something, lead them into, discovering something significant, but it doesn't. It's just a dead end, which amounts to nothing. Because ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, the meth head doesn't bring them any closer to finding the killer. So let's go into the traps. One thing about the finger trap that this is all the traps really. What I hate about the traps in this movie is that not a single person survives, and it's rare for someone to survive a saw trap. Like, it's every single Saw movie might have 1 or 2 survivors at the very most, but it's extremely rare. But I always hate that. I've always hated that about the Saw movies, because it kind of ruins. It kind of takes the suspense out where you basically expect everyone to die. You don't really expect anyone to make it out, because it's kind of just what they do. I guess they just want to show you a cool gore effect, so just have the guy die in the trap so we have an excuse to show some blood. I don't. I would rather I would rather people actually make it out of the traps from time to time, but it's so rare throughout the series. It kind of removes the suspense from the traps, because you really ever expect them to get out of the traps. And in this movie, like I said, not a single person survives. Everyone in a trap dies in this movie. And the finger trap. So the guy has to rip off his fingers or he will get electrocuted. That's the trap. And this trap, it's a shame because I felt like the guy deserved to live. I mean, basically he gunned down an unarmed suspect. He killed someone just because they flipped him the bird. Literally, that's the trap. That's why he is put in the trap, because he killed someone because they insulted him. But I felt like this guy was really going for it, and it's interesting. Maybe I'm reading too much into the actor's performance, but when the tapes end in a trap, typically the victims throw a temper tantrum. They start going, "Oh, fuck you," they start screaming and shit. And don't get me wrong, throwing a temper tantrum is a very appropriate reaction to waking up in one of these things. I'm sure I would do the same if I was in a situation like this. But this guy in the finger trap, maybe I'm reading too much into the actor's performance, but there's this close up on his face when the tape ends where he doesn't even start screaming or cussing or anything. He kind of just, it's like he gets himself psyched up. But I feel like it was almost as if he had accepted what he had done, and it's as if he was accepting, like, this is my punishment. I've done wrong, and well, it's time to face. It's time to face my punishment. That was the impression I got from him. So I would have liked it if this guy survived, and he is really going for it in this trap as well. He puts in a good effort to the point where I was really cheering for him and rooting for him. But of course, he doesn't make it out. And this guy, I think this is where the movie could have explored the police corruption stuff in a bit more depth. Because if this guy got out of the trap, think about it. We could have had a scene of him in hospital. You could have Chris Rock, Zeke come in, and even William, the rookie, Well, you could have had William come in. William, the killer, the guy who put the guy in the trap in the first place. So we could have had a scene where Fitch is the victim. A scene where Fitch reflects on what just happened. He could have reflected on the fact that he killed someone. And, that's why he was put in the trap. He could have reflected on what he had done. How he's going to live for the rest of his life with no fingers. That's something that... It's an interesting angle that the other Saw movies never really exploited much. I mean, yeah, you have Amanda. You have a quick little hospital scene in Saw 6 with Simone after she survives her trap. And then in Saw 7, you get the survivors meeting, but it's mostly really shallow. They don't really explore... Because think about it, that would be an interesting story to tell. Something to explore. Kind of, somebody's reaction and how they are going to live the rest of their life now that they've been so horribly maimed or disfigured in the trap. After getting out, you're living with whatever the trap made you do for the rest of your life. So I think that would have been an interesting thing to really focus on, that the series never really exploited in a meaningful way. And I think this would have been a good opportunity for that. So if Fitch got out of the trap, you could have had the scene of him in hospital reflecting on the experience and being like, well, I have no fingers anymore. You could have had kind of like a little, maybe an emotional scene there. Have him reflect on what he had done, why he was put in the trap in the first place. And because there's also a really out of place flashback where after Fitch is dead, the movie plays a flashback where Chris Rock needed backup, but Fitch, hating Chris Rock's character, decided not to come. So Chris Rock ended up getting shot because Fitch refused to respond to the backup request. So that would have been the perfect time to play that flashback. So you could have had Chris Rock talking to Fitch, and you could have had like a nice little redemption moment, maybe, if you can call it that, where he's kind of like, those years ago, I didn't respond to your backup request, and you got shot because of it. You could have had like a nice little tender moment where he's basically like, I'm sorry, I was a dick. I'm sorry. You could have had like a nice little human tender moment, something which the Saw movies rarely ever have. Not in the sequels, that's for sure. And that's the thing. The first half of Spiral, it kind of has those a few tender moments, where like these quiet moments where people are kind of sitting around talking about their emotions, how they feel, and that quickly goes out the window when the second half of the movie ramps up to this fast-paced kind of rapid-fire scene after scene after scene. So Fitch surviving the trap would have been a perfect opportunity to have a little quiet moments. And, you could have, maybe they could have had a conversation when Fitch is reflecting on what he did to be put in the trap. You could have had this moment where he kind of talks about, like, why he joined the police force to begin with, and, how did he become this somebody who was monstrous enough to just kill someone because they've flipped him off? How did he become so kind of comfortable with this power to the point where he was willing to just kill someone like that? That was an opportunity to kind of explore the kind of the police corruption, the police brutality angle, instead of just saying that everyone is a mustache twirling supervillain who laughs maniacally as they gun down unarmed suspects. That was your moment to like humanize one of these corrupt cops and explore something, explore a more interesting angle with them. But nope. Why do that when you could just see a guy get electrocuted? I mean, the electrocution effect was pretty good, but I mean, I would have preferred some character stuff. I mean, that was a great opportunity, I feel. They wasted it. Shame. So, let's move on to a wax trap. Let's talk about this one. So, this trap takes place in the basement of the police department. It's in the evidence room. The evidence room is in the basement of the police department. So yes, the killer got a trap into the evidence room of the police department. How he accomplished that, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I guess with the Saw movies, you kind of got to suspend your disbelief to a certain extent. And that's one problem I know a lot of people had with William. I didn't have this problem, but some people are saying stuff like, well, John Kramer, he was an engineer, so how he created all of these traps, it's still far-fetched, but he was an engineer, so I guess some people are willing to go along with that. But I don't know, with the Saw movies, when it comes to how complex the traps are, I don't know. Sure, they would take a lot of money and time and resources to create and skill, but it's kind of a little something you kind of gotta just go with. It's the sort of thing you gotta suspend your disbelief on. How does he find all of these abandoned buildings and well, I mean, John Kramer just happened to own a lot of properties, so I guess that's your explanation there. But some people were bitching that William, to our knowledge, he doesn't have any engineering background. He's a rookie detective. So where did he get the spare time to learn how to create all these death traps? That's just something I don't care. It's a Saw movie. It's gonna have traps. Just there's things you gotta just go with, and that's something I'm willing to suspend my disbelief on. Kind of, how do these apprentices create these traps? You just gotta go with it. But this trap is kind of bothers you, not so much how did he create it, but how did he get this trap in the evidence room? And this trap is really basic and simple, but so I guess this trap is more lighter. It's lighter and more portable than your average Saw trap, but even with as kind of small scale as they tried to make this trap, you're still kind of wondering, well, how come nobody said, hey, what are you doing? Why are you carrying that thing? Why are you carrying that torture device into the evidence room? Did he do it when everybody was out of the station? And maybe I'm nitpicking here, but who knows the combination? Because the evidence room is locked by a combination door. How did he get the combination to this? He's a rookie detective, so did he already have the combination? And when Chris Rock realizes that Angie is in this trap, he's rushing to the evidence room with another female police officer. But Chris Rock doesn't open the evidence room, she does. So do only a few people know the combination? Not even Chris Rock. So if that's the case, why would William have the combination? How did he open it? How did he get the trap in there without anyone noticing? And how did he get the combination? Did he torture Pete? Pete is an ex-cop who, because William ends up kidnapping Samuel Jackson and Chris Rock's ex-partner, so maybe he tortured them until they gave him the combination. I don't know. Assuming the combination hadn't been changed all those years, because both Pete and the Samuel Jackson character were retired for a long time, for years. So I don't know. It's nitpicky, but it's like, how did he get down there? But let's talk about the trap itself. So Angie is strapped to a table, and above her head is a it's like a vat of boiling hot wax. And by the way, I really like the way the voice enunciated that word, where he goes, "In a few seconds, boiling hot wax." It's like it kind of sounds. Anyone watching this probably isn't going to know what I'm talking about, but it kind of sounded like Mike Matei's impression of Inspector Gadget. I'm not knocking the voice. Again, I really like the voice, but I kind of liked how he enunciated that part of the tape. Boiling hot wax. But basically, she's strapped to a table. Above her head, a vat of boiling hot wax, which will pour down on her face and suffocate her. And to get out of this is where I like this in concept. So the suffocation by hot wax, I think, is cool. I like that. There's a really scary kill which does the same thing in a horror movie called Tourist Trap. If you've ever seen that, that has a really great kill which uses like this really a similar concept. But so I like the wax part of the trap. But wait until you hear what she has to do to get out of this. This is something that everybody brings up who have seen the movie. So I'm not, breaking new grounds with this observation, but to get out of this, she has to sever her spinal cord. So she will be paralyzed for life. Now, I like that. I think that's actually a really cool kind of original idea. When you try to think of saw traps, you kind of come up with these generic things like someone who has to rip out their tongue, someone who has to rip off their fingers, somebody who has to rip out their eyes. You come up with these really kind of generic things. Someone who has to rip out their teeth. Pretty basic stuff, right? Those are kind of like the first things that come to your mind if you try to think of a saw trap. This is something I've never considered before, but it's a great idea where, yeah, imagine that paralyzing yourself. And that's something which kind of brought me back to Saw 1, where you kind of become desensitized to the traps as time goes on. But back in Saw 1, you were kind of putting yourself in the character's shoes and thinking to yourself, would I do that to save myself? And this was a dilemma where I actually kind of thought to myself, that actually made me think, where I was like, man, that's a tough one, where if I was in this trap, I wouldn't even try to get out. I would just accept the suffocation. I wouldn't even try. I'd be like, I'm done. Yeah. I don't think I wouldn't have the balls to paralyze myself. I would be done for. Not a chance. So the hot wax part is fine. The fact she has to paralyze herself, I think, is great. That's a really cool idea. But the way she has to paralyze herself is just kind of bizarre. Where the way she has to do it is right sticking out of the table, right beneath her neck, is a little blade. So she has to, I guess, I don't know, push her head backwards against the blade until it cuts into her neck and severs her spinal cord. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I mean, is that really practical? That's the way she's supposed to do it? I don't know, maybe it can be done, but I don't know. It seems kind of tough. I mean, maybe that's the point of the traps, but this one especially, is that really practical? I don't know about that. So throughout the entire trap, you're kind of watching it, kind of bewildered, perplexed more than anything, just wondering, because throughout the trap, she's being poured, her face is being covered in the hot wax. So, she's screaming and thrashing about in agony, of course. And throughout the entire thing, you're just like, but how would you really do that? Is that really possible? Is that really possible? Maybe it is, but it seems kind of... Again, I really like the idea of that, though, the paralyzing yourself. I think that's a really creative idea for a saw trap. It's just the way she was supposed to accomplish that is kind of strange. I'm not sure what else they could come up with, because she is strapped to a table, so she doesn't have a lot of mobility. All she can really do is just move her head back and forth. I guess maybe some people would suggest, what if it was a mechanism? What if she had a button in her hand which would cause a mechanism to sever her spinal cord for her? I don't know, I guess that's a way around it, but I actually prefer it when the victims have to do it themselves manually. I think it kind of takes away the horror if the victim can just press a button and some other device does it for them. You know, like in Saw 5, when Seth is in the pendulum trap, to stop the pendulum, he has to crush his hands, some vices. But with that, he just puts his hand in a vice and hits a button. And as long as he presses that button, the vice will start to tighten and crush his hand for him. So it's not as if he has to stick his hand in the vice, then manually crank it to crush his own hand. A machine does it for him. So, you know, like I said, I think it would kind of take the horror away if a machine would do it for her. So I would prefer it if she has to do it herself. It's just the way she had to do it. It's perplexing. It's just, could you really do that? I'm not sure. Maybe you can, but it's just kind of a strange scene. And, you know, I really like the finger trap, but again, the finger trap does the thing where the machine is ripping off his fingers. All he is doing is consenting to the machine. He controls whether or not the machine is on or off. So, you know, he's basically saying machine on, you know, he's the one who decides whether or not the machine is on or off. He's not ripping off the fingers himself. He's just turning on the machine that rips off his fingers. So, you know, I still love the finger trap. I'm just saying, for the finger trap, it worked, but I'm just saying, I wouldn't have preferred this trap to have some kind of automated system that cuts his spine. I think that would have taken horror out of it. But the way she was supposed to accomplish it, it is weird. And it kind of makes the trap itself is kind of unexciting because you can't really tell how much progress Angie is making with cutting her spine. She's thrashing about in pain, of course, because the wax is coming on her face. And you get a few close-ups of the blade cutting into her neck. But with this trap, it's not very exciting because you can't really tell if she's making progress or not. With the finger trap, you can see how far his fingers are being stretched. You can count how many fingers have been ripped off. So you can tell how far along in the trap the guy is. But with Angie in the wax trap, you have no sense of progression, so you can't tell if she's actually making much progress here. So, you know, as a trap, it's not very exciting to watch. But again, I like the concept. I like the wax idea. I like the severing of the spinal cord, but trap it just wasn't really executed very well. Good ideas, just wasn't executed well. So the next trap is, I'm not sure what you could call this, the glass trap or whatever. I hated this trap. I thought this trap sucked. So if you haven't seen the movie, listen until I explain this. A guy is chained by his wrists and hanging from the ceiling. He's in front of a machine. I think it's like a trash compactor. I'm not sure if that's what it actually is, but it's basically a machine with these grinding gears. These gears which are like spinning away. So whatever you feed into the machine basically gets shredded by the gears. So there's a conveyor belt above the machine filled with glass bottles. So this conveyor belt feeds a steady supply of glass bottles into the machine, and those munching gears, they eat away at the glass bottles at such a high speed that they propel the broken glass shards across the room at the guy standing in front of the machine. And that's the trap. So the guy's trained in front of a machine, shooting out shards of glass. And that's it. It's just, I mean, yeah, that would kill you, of course. Eventually, the shards of glass would just slice you up and just start eating away at your internal organs. Yeah, I get it, but it just seems really dumb and silly. It feels like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It feels like I'm watching Tom and Jerry or a live-action cartoon. It's just a guy standing in front of a machine as hundreds of shards of glass are constantly being pelted at him. It's just really, I don't know, I'm not sure, it comes across as really silly. I just think it's a really bad trap. I would rather that trap not be in the movie at all. It's just really silly. I really hated this thing. And the scene itself is just really boring as well. I would rather the trap not be in the movie at all. Like, from concept, I don't even like the concept. There's nothing about this trap that I liked. I can say the actor did a good job. The actor in the trap did a fine job. The actor playing Pete. And props to him for being able to sell what he was going through when, you know, the trap was so silly and ridiculous. And I went online to see what people said about this trap, and people seem to like it. Apparently, I'm in the minority, but I was expecting people to be ripping this trap apart online, but I don't know. Apparently, people like this one. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was really stupid, but I don't know. I'm in the minority. Apparently, people seem to like it. And I guess another thing that doesn't help the trap is that it does the. I hate these kind of traps where somebody's in the trap and somebody else has to save them. So the person in the trap isn't in charge of their own fate. Somebody else has to save them. I hate those kind of traps. That's a big reason why I don't like Saw 6. I think William's game in Saw 6 is just honestly really boring. I don't like his test at all. Of course, I hate Bobby's test in Saw 7 as well. I like Jeff's test in Saw 3 because it uses that formula of people in traps and someone else having to save them. But it was the first time we had ever seen it. So it was new, it was fresh, it was original. But it wasn't a formula that I ever wanted to see again. Because there's not much to do with that formula. It's just very bland. It's like, it's not exciting to watch when someone is not in charge of their own fate. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I didn't like that. I mean, that's not my only problem with the trap. My problem with the trap is that just the idea of this guy being pelted with shards of glass. It's so silly. I don't like it. I thought it was dreadful. And the ending of the scene is awful because Chris Rock is the one who has to try and save the guy from the trap. He doesn't save him in time, but at the very end, the guy's entire back has been mangled, where all of the skin on his back has been taken away, so you can see his ribcage. But the guy is supposed to be dead, but he goes limp. He's hanging from the chains like that. He goes limp, and Chris Rock goes, "What?" You know, he's like, "No," you know. He's like, "Pete, Pete." So it just looks really silly where Chris Rock kind of just shakes him a little. He's like, "Pete, Pete." And then he's like, "Oh, I guess you're dead." And then he just walks away. I mean, I get it. It's a movie. You got to move things along, but it's what if he's just unconscious? You know, I mean, for the movie's sake, yeah, he's dead. But what if he was unconscious? I mean, you would obviously take him down because at this point, Chris Rock has the key to release him, but he just leaves him hanging there. He's just like he shakes him a little bit, going, "Pete, Pete," and oh, I guess you're dead. And he just walks straight out the room. It came across as really silly and comical. And, I mean, you wouldn't leave him hanging there. Obviously, in real world, you'd be like, oh, well, he's probably... Well, yeah, he might be dead, but what if he's just unconscious? You would take him down, at least. At the very least, you would unlock the chains and take him down. But instead, it's just... It comes across really silly and awkward with him. He shakes him a little, and then, oh, I guess you're dead. Walks away. That moment, it just came across as really silly and just dumb. As if the trap itself wasn't bad enough. That moment was just really awkward. It just didn't work. It didn't work. Man, that trap was fucking stupid. I did not like that trap. So, before I get to the final trap, I want to talk about the structuring of a certain scene, the order of a certain scene. So, early in the movie, William, who of course turns out to be the killer, all of the cops are in the police department working late. William says, "Hey, my battery's out. Let me borrow your phone." So he borrows Chris Rock's phone. And in the next scene or two, Samuel Jackson rolls up to a factory, an abandoned factory. So, if you're not, if you haven't caught on to the twist yet, you're like, why did Samuel Jackson roll up to the warehouse? Like why did he come here? So, but obviously, once you know the twist, or if you've already figured out the twist, it's obvious that William borrowed Chris Rock's phone in the previous scene, and off screen he texted Samuel Jackson to come and meet him at the warehouse because Samuel Jackson goes to the warehouse and then he gets kidnapped by William. William captures him to put him in a trap, and that trap appears at the very end of the movie. So this happens early in the movie. William borrows Chris Rock's phone, texts Samuel Jackson saying, "Hey, come meet me at this warehouse." So Samuel Jackson shows up there, thinking that Chris Rock asked him to come there, and William kidnaps Samuel Jackson when he's there. So the thing is, the movie doesn't show Samuel Jackson getting kidnapped here, getting captured. Instead, you get the scene. William borrows the phone off screen. He texts Samuel Jackson asking him to meet him at the factory. The next scene or two, Samuel Jackson shows up at the factory, but the scene ends there, and then the rest of the movie happens. And then, right before the third act begins, they show you what happened to Samuel Jackson after he showed up at the warehouse, which is this really kind of boring, long drawn out scene of Samuel Jackson stumbling around the warehouse until he gets kidnapped by William in the pig mask. And it just feels strange where it's like, oh, now you're deciding to show us the rest of that scene. But it feels uncalled for and just bizarre, just really kind of sloppy kind of structuring of your movie. And I guess they did it because Samuel Jackson is missing throughout the movie because he was kidnapped by William when he went to the warehouse, and they don't show you the kidnapping until towards the end of the movie. So I guess they wanted it to be a red herring that to make you think that Samuel Jackson was the killer. You know, Samuel Jackson has been missing the entire movie. You know, where is he? Where is he? So I guess they wanted most of the audience to suspect that Samuel Jackson was the killer. But it doesn't work because in the trailer, they show Samuel Jackson in the trap. So why would anyone ever think he is the killer? And, you know, it's one thing for fans to be analyzing every single frame of the trailer to ruin it for themselves. That's how we knew William was the killer before the movie was even out. But it's another thing to just blatantly show Samuel Jackson in a trap in the trailer and then expect us to think he may be the killer. So, no, it's just the structure was just really bizarre. I felt as if they should have just showed Samuel Jackson getting captured straight away. I guess they were self-conscious about the William twist being really obvious. I guess they structured it like this because they wanted to try and stop you from realizing William is the killer. Because William borrows Chris Rock's phone. The very next scene, Samuel Jackson shows up to a warehouse. You know, from an audience, a first-time viewer's perspective, he's showing up to the warehouse for no reason. You're like, what the hell is going on? Why is Samuel Jackson here? But of course, William texts him between scenes, asking him to go to the warehouse. And then I just felt like they probably were self-conscious about the William twist being so obvious, because if Samuel Jackson shows up to this warehouse seemingly for no reason and then gets kidnapped at this warehouse, I guess they felt it was too obvious for the audience to figure out. You know, if the previous scene is William borrowing Chris Rock's phone, it's kind of obvious. So I think that's why they did it. So I don't know. I don't think that's the way to go about things, though. Suddenly showing the rest of that scene towards the end of the movie. You know, you structured the movie in a really kind of jarring way just to try and hide the twist. That is not the way you should go about things. I don't agree with that decision. Some people will argue it's a minor thing, I guess, but I just don't agree. I don't agree with that choice. So, let's go into the final trap, I guess. Is there anything else to mention before we get into this big moment at the end of the movie? Okay, I think I'm ready to go into the final trap. I just sat there for a while, and I'm not really thinking of anything else to talk about. Okay, so the final trap. So at this point, Chris Rock, he finds out that William is the killer. William, you know, he's there. He lets him find out. After walking out of the glass trap, Chris Rock stumbles across William in the warehouse, and you know, he gives a little monologue of, yeah, I'm the killer. This is why I'm the killer. My daddy was killed by a corrupt cop, but I like you because you're one of the good cops. You turned in the dirty cop, and I like you because of that. So here we go. So this final trap. So at this point, Chris Rock knows that William has kidnapped Samuel Jackson, who is Marcus. His character is Marcus. So he's like, you know, where's my dad? Where's my dad? And William leads Chris Rock into the final trap room where Samuel Jackson is. So Samuel Jackson is strung up in this harness, and he has a bunch of tubes which are draining his blood into beakers. So they walk into this room. You see Samuel Jackson hanging from this thing in a harness. He's hanging from the ceiling in this harness. There's clearly more to the trap than just draining his blood, because there's all of these wires kind of linked to his joints. Like on his elbows and his wrists, there's all these kind of wires connected to Samuel Jackson. So his blood is being drained, yeah, but you can clearly see there's more that's gonna happen with this trap than just the blood. But the killer William, he basically says to Chris Rock, "Okay, your daddy is a corrupt piece of shit. You know, he's an ex police chief, chief of police. But when he was the chief of police, he was a corrupt piece of shit. Blah blah blah. I mean, no shit. And some people, I don't know. Again, some people are so desperate to pretend as if this movie had a great twist. So they perform. I'm coming across as a snarky asshole, but it's like I feel like people are performing mental gymnastics to say, "Oh no, the twist isn't that William is the killer. The twist is that Samuel Jackson is corrupt." I've seen some people argue that, and I mean, yeah, no shit. I mean, they cast Samuel Jackson as a corrupt. They cast Samuel Jackson as the ex chief of police in a movie about a serial killer hunting corrupt police. I mean, yeah, of course he's corrupt. I mean, why wouldn't you think that? That's not a twist. That's an even worse twist than William being the killer. Of course Samuel Jackson is corrupt. Why wouldn't you assume that? Why wouldn't you assume that? Of course he's corrupt. And I don't mean to straw man anyone here, but you know, that's not the only argument people put forward. Aside from, I've seen somebody try to argue that Samuel Jackson being corrupt is the real twist. Yeah, of course he's corrupt. Why wouldn't you think that? I mean, yeah, that's something you assume from the beginning. But another argument people make is that how the puppet trap works is the twist. This trap that we've seen for the first time in the final 4 minutes of the movie, this is the twist. What? I disagree. Some people make, you know, a few people making that argument. I don't mean to say, you know, of course you're entitled to your opinion, but I disagree. I mean, we've seen this trap for the first time in the entire movie in the final 3 minutes. This trap is on screen for about 3 minutes, and then it goes off. And you're telling me the way the trap works is the twist? I can't agree with that. A twist is something which it's something which it should be an element which is present throughout the movie, and then at the very end you reveal that that element is not what the audience thought it was. This trap is something that we walk into the final 3 minutes of the movie, and you're telling me the way this trap works is supposed to be the big twist? I mean, it's a cool moment. Well, it's not a cool moment. I'll get to it, but I like the idea of this trap, but they failed. I think they failed. They didn't pull it off. But I mean, I forgot where I'm going with this. I'm kind of just what point was I getting at? No, it's like saying the ending of Saw 5, the coffin trap at the ending of Saw 5 is the twist of Saw 5, which is not the case. The twist of Saw 5 is that Hoffman was framing Strom, which of course is an obvious twist, but that is the twist. That was what the twist was supposed to be. The twist isn't that this trap you saw in the final 2 minutes of the movie actually works a way that you didn't realize. I'll get into it. So let's get into this thing, yeah? This trap. Again, let's go back a bit. Again, I don't mind a twist. You know, it's not the end of the world if the twist in the movie is shit. You know, the twist of this movie is bad, okay? But it's not the end of the world. If you like the movie, you enjoy the puppet trap. Enjoy, whatever else you liked about the movie. It's just, I think trying to call the puppet trap the twist of the movie, I think it's kind of, I'm coming across as really like snarky. I don't know, it feels just disingenuous to me. I don't know. I can't agree. I can't agree that it is at all the twist of the movie. The twist is that William is the killer, and it's okay for a twist to be bad. You can still enjoy the movie on other merits if you find other merits in the movie. But okay, let's get into the puppet trap for real this time. So, Samuel Jackson, he's hung up in this harness, suspended from the ceiling. There's these tubes leading into him, which are draining his blood, so he's going to bleed to death. William says, okay, he's going to bleed to death. To get him out of the trap, here's a gun with 1 bullet. So you can either take me out, you can either shoot me in the face right now. Stop me from killing any more cops, shoot me in the face right now. Or you can shoot a target on the ceiling, which will release Samuel Jackson from the trap. So Zeke shoots the target, which releases Samuel Jackson. So the cord, which is, the ropes, the wires which are suspending Samuel Jackson, they go limp, and he drops to the floor. And Chris Rock removes the tubes which are draining his blood. So he's like, oh, he's safe. Samuel Jackson is safe. Obviously not, because you can tell from all those wires there's more to the trap than just draining his blood. But Chris Rock figures, okay, Samuel Jackson is safe. My dad is safe. I'm going to go beat the shit out of William. I don't have to have any more bullets to shoot him in the face, but I'm going to beat the shit out of William and apprehend the killer, So, meanwhile, a SWAT team is arriving, and the door to the room is rigged. So the SWAT team heard the gunshot that Zeke used to free Samuel Jackson. So they are coming into the room that they are in. So Chris Rock is beating the shit out of William. The SWAT team bust into the room, and they set off a tripwire by breaking into the room. And this triggers, the trap to really, the real part of the trap. So the SWAT team trigger a tripwire. The trap reactivates where it starts hoisting Samuel Jackson back up into the air. Make it look like he's standing. And then the wire on Samuel Jackson's arm retracts. So Samuel Jackson, his arm goes, it goes straight forward like that. Like a puppet, that's what, the puppet trap. All these wires connected to him. It's like Samuel Jackson is being puppeteered, which again is a cool idea. Great imagery, cool idea. Just I don't think they executed it well. So the part of the trap on Samuel Jackson's arm, it looks like a fake shotgun. It is a fake, it is fake, but it looks like a shotgun. So the SWAT team bust into the room. These powerful lights behind Samuel Jackson turn on. So all you can make out of Samuel Jackson is a silhouette. So Samuel Jackson's arm, the wire on his arm, it hoists up. So his arm, looking like a fake shotgun, goes. And of course, the SWAT team, thinking, that's somebody about to shoot them, they all open fire and kill Samuel Jackson. And William, meanwhile, has slipped into an elevator, and the movie ends. It just doesn't. It just all feels really rushed. Like, I feel as if the scene should have gone on for a lot longer, but the scene is really chaotic, but not in a good way. We needed more time here. I guess we needed to spend more time with William. These 3 characters in the room, William, Zeke, and Marcus. I think we needed to spend more time with them kind of talking before the trap went off for it to be more effective. But as it stands, it's just really chaotic, but not in a good way, to the point where all this random shit is happening, and you're like, what is going on here? And then when Samuel Jackson is silhouetted as a gunman, the SWAT team just shoot him down. You're like, okay, so that's what the trap does, and the movie ends, and you're like, wait, what? It just feels just really just messy. It happens maybe too fast, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or we needed a little bit more breathing room. Maybe this would have benefited. I think I would have liked the trap more if it was introduced earlier into the movie, where, because it feels like there was a point to introduce this trap earlier into the movie, where Samuel Jackson gets kidnapped about 30 minutes into the movie, or even earlier than that, 20 minutes maybe. So why not show him waking up in the trap there? You could even have the killer send in the police footage of Samuel Jackson in the trap throughout the movie. So then we have this kind of ticking clock element where we have to find Samuel Jackson. We have to find him. But I guess they were more concerned with, so, you know, when the trap finally does go off, you have more time to process what you thought the trap was beforehand, before it goes off. Instead, it's this really kind of rapid fire, here's this new trap you've never seen before, and as you're still trying to figure out what you're looking at, the trap goes off and the movie's over, and you're like, what? You know, what the fuck did I just, you know, what just happened? You know, not that I was confused. I understood what was happening, but you needed more time to kind of process it for it to really be impactful. But instead, you know, Samuel Jackson gets gunned down by the SWAT team. William makes a getaway in a nearby elevator, and the movie's over. And it just happens so suddenly and so abruptly. You're like, that's it. I like the puppet trap in concept again, in theory, on paper. I just feel like they rushed it so bad it falls flat on its face. And we are supposed to care that Samuel Jackson was just killed, but I don't really care because he was in the movie for about 10 minutes, if that. And that goes back to me saying we needed more scenes with Samuel Jackson. Not just because it's Samuel Jackson, but his character is just a one-dimensional, shouty ex-police chief. You know, there's nothing really to him. So we needed more scenes with him for us to get to know him, to care about him. They could have given us a scene or two of him trying to patch up the relationship with Zeke, because in Zeke and Marcus's first scene, it's clear that their relationship isn't great. They are pretty kind of distant emotionally. So, and Samuel Jackson even agrees to try and patch things up. He's like, oh, I'll tell you what, we'll go over the case tomorrow. You know, so there was a chance for them to bond if we had some scenes of them investigating together. But instead, Samuel Jackson gets kidnapped very quickly after that scene, so he doesn't get that opportunity to bond with Zeke. So I think that's a problem, is that I'm supposed to care that Samuel Jackson just died, except I don't, because we don't know this character at all. Aside from, I'm a ex-police chief who was corrupt. You know, that's the extent to his character. Don't get me wrong, Samuel Jackson is great, as always, but there just wasn't anything to the character. You know, you're enjoying Samuel Jackson's character because Samuel Jackson is playing him. But, you know, you're not seeing the character, you're seeing Samuel Jackson. So, yeah, I think that's another reason why it kind of falls flat on its face. I guess maybe we're supposed to care that Samuel Jackson died because of Zeke, because of Chris Rock. Because, you know, by proxy, you know, we are a bit more invested in Zeke because he is really the only developed character throughout the movie. So I guess we're supposed to feel sorry because his dad died. And Chris Rock does a good job in the scene, by the way. His acting's pretty good. And so Samuel Jackson, I will say that, although I don't really care that the character died, but I did kind of feel sorry as he was being hoisted back into the air before the trap does what it does to trick the SWAT team into killing him. Because when he's being hoisted back into the air, I don't know, it's just Samuel Jackson, he looked so kind of helpless as he was being lifted back into the air. I felt really bad for him, like, oh, you know. Oh, you know. But again, it's not really because of the character, it's not because we know the character, it's just because it's Samuel Jackson, and Samuel Jackson is so good. It's so good. But yeah, the trap just didn't work. I'm sorry. I know people love this trap. A lot of people love this ending, but I feel like it falls flat. We needed to care about Samuel Jackson. He needed more scenes for us to care when he died. And the trap itself needed more screen time. It's just, the pacing of the scene was so quick and rapid fire. They needed to slow things down. You know, when the trap does go off, when he's being hoisted back into the air and he aims the fake gun at the police, I think that's fine. The pacing and everything there is fine. It's just, we needed more time before that. Instead of, like, kind of, I feel like they were really quick to rush into the trap going off instead of giving us time to think about the trap. But instead, you're kind of scatterbrained looking at this thing, thinking, you know, what the hell am I looking at here? And then before you really have any time to process what the trap could be, the trap just does what it does. So instead of you being surprised by what the trap does, it's more of instead of you having time to be misled by the trap, you're just, oh, so that's what the trap does. Instead of being shocked or surprised when it does what it does. Again, I like the concept, they didn't pull it off well, in my opinion. There's the one moment during the trap as well that it should be giving me chills. I want this moment to give me chills, where when Samuel Jackson is hoisted back up, he has the fake shotgun in his hand on his arm. And so when the trap forces his arm to raise up like that with the shotgun in his hand, the fake shotgun, they do this cool little edit where the killer has a pig puppet that he uses earlier in the movie. He has a little pig puppet dressed up as a cop with a gun in its hand. So as Samuel Jackson raises the fake shotgun, it cuts to the pig puppet raising the gun. So they do this kind of little, parallel with when the killer made the puppet raise the gun with Samuel Jackson raising the fake shotgun. I like that little edit, and the music swells as it happens. But it's just I was just sitting there thinking I should be getting chills here. That's the moment where I should be like, oh fuck, goosebumps, chills. That's when the hairs on the back of my neck should be standing up. But nope, they missed it. I hate saying it because I really like the trap idea again, but they just missed it. They did not play off. I hate it. I hate it. It frustrates me because of how good. That's the thing. Again, the entire movie is just a lot of great ideas that they didn't properly realize. The 90-minute running time, I guess, is a big issue that really hurt it and stopped them from pacing or expanding the ideas that needed better pacing or expanding. It's a shame. Something like Jigsaw, when I walked out of it, there's really nothing about the concept, even from the premise to the concept, there was nothing about Jigsaw which made me think, oh yeah, that could have been great, but they messed it up. From the beginning, Jigsaw was kind of just a bland, forgettable, trashy Saw movie, so I wasn't really mad about it. And I'm not mad about this, I'm just disappointed. Because there is the foundation for a great Saw movie here. They just dropped the ball. And again, I'm critical because I care. I love the Saw movies, and I'm critical because I care. I doubt many people are as critical of the Saw sequels as much as I am. Like, people who hate the Saw movies probably aren't as critical of the Saw sequels as I am, and I love them. I'm critical because I care. So, that's why I'm coming across as so negative. But again, I can sit and watch this movie and really have a good time with it. Like any Saw movie, like any Saw sequel. It's just, I was hoping this could be a bit more than just a silly Saw movie. And it could have been. It's just, they missed the mark. That's all it is to say. Great ideas, and they just didn't quite pull them off. It hurts. It hurts. I really wanted this to be a killer Saw movie, but doesn't quite make them. Yeah, I think I'm done now. I think that's really all I have to say. Just a lot of great stuff. Didn't pull them off. Didn't pull it off right. No, just mainly, I wish they had kept the pacing that they had in the first 30 minutes of the movie. I wish they could have kept that going for the entire movie and have the cops do actual detective work throughout the movie. Again, making William the killer, it hurt the movie for me because I was really enjoying him and Zeke bonding throughout the movie. I really like their bromance developing. So, of course, he turns out to be the killer. And it is one thing if he turned out to be the killer at the end. It's like, okay, but at least we would have had their bonding throughout the movie regardless. But the thing is, William fakes his death about halfway through the movie. And he's gone. So there goes the buddy cop element that I was really enjoying. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. One quick little detail, I guess. It's not a big thing, but I did quite like this one shot during Angie's capture sequence where when she walks into the evidence room, it's just a boring, flat shot. I mean this as a compliment in a good way, where she just walks into the evidence room and then on the other side of the room in a boring, flat shot, William in the pig mask is just standing there. I did really like that, the reveal of him in the pig mask there. I don't know, it's just, I think that was well done. There's something kind of creepy about that shot because it was so just, it just, they didn't try to stylize it. It was just so bland and real. It felt real because it was such a boring shot. I don't know. There was something about that. It was just really creepy where he just walked into the room and just on the other side, he's just standing there. There's no like big kind of. There's no jump scare. There's no musical sting. She just walks in and he's just standing there. That's it. I quite like that. It was like a creepy shot. It kind of comes across. I'm sure that comes across as comical to some people, that shot. But I quite like that. I thought that was pretty good. And also, as far as the usual kidnapping scenes go, that was pretty fun as well, because instead of the usual, the killer walks up to them and chloroforms them or something, it was a fun little, more action orientated kidnapping scene where he's using he uses these like sleeping gas or smoke grenades or whatever to sedate her. So I thought that was a pretty good scene, kidnapping scene. I also expected her to survive Angie when she was in that trap. It was one of few moments where I actually thought they would survive. Not that I thought she was going to paralyze herself, but of course, throughout that trap, Chris Rock knows she's in the trap, and he's racing against time to save her. So I actually thought they might actually make it on time and actually save her from the trap, but of course, she died, and I was really surprised by that. And that's a shame. I did quite like her. So I was hoping if we do get a sequel, we could see her in a sequel, but no, she's out of the picture. That's a shame. I thought the actress did a good job. But yeah, I think I'm done though. Just over 2 hours. That's me rambling about Spiral for 2 hours. That's par for the course. Yeah, it's just... I mean, where do they go from here? Are they going to make another Spiral movie? Or are they going to say, okay, we missed the mark. It's time to let Saw rest for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. You know, my heart says, let's keep pumping out more Saw movies, whether it's a Spiral 2 or yet another reboot. Good luck. I'm not sure if the general audience will be fatigued at this point. You tried to do another reboot, but no, my heart says just keep cranking them out. I'll be there year after year. It doesn't matter. I'll be there opening day every time. Doesn't matter. Where to go? Where to go from here? Spiral 2, another reboot. I know they are expressing interest in making a John Kramer centric Saw movie set when he was still alive. I don't know. It's just where to go from here. Like, my brain honestly says, let Saw rest for 20 years or so. That's what my brain says. It's time to let it rest. I hate to say that. But I think that's what they should really do. But we'll see. You know, if they make another Saw movie, I hope it just gets better. But that's the thing. They've kind of set the tone with this movie, Spiral 1, as a 90-minute roller coaster ride. It's not a real kind of character-driven movie because, well, it's only 90 minutes, so you don't really have the time to really treat it like a real movie. You know what I mean? The first half of this movie felt like a real movie. It was slow-paced. You had those quiet moments of characters talking about their feelings, reflecting on what's going on. And then the second half of the movie happens, and it becomes a directionless, aimless, just mishmash of random stuff happening without any real cause and effect. But that's the thing. You've kind of set the tone here, this uneven tone of where the movie was mostly just a fast-paced roller coaster ride without much character stuff. So you've kind of set the tone for the Spiral series if you end up making sequels to it. So I don't know. I don't see them making a Spiral 2. I can't imagine them making Spiral 2 if they do make it a character-driven movie. I feel like it's just going to be another 90-minute kind of rushed job. I hate to say it, but I don't know. I would love for them to surprise me, but I just feel like Spiral sequels will just be more of the same. More just really rushed hack jobs. I'm being a bit too mean there, but... You know, they did try with this movie. It's just... I'm not sure what kind of went wrong during the production or the writing or the conception or what. It's just... You know, this movie lost its way. It started off so well and it lost its way. A little while after the finger trap. You know, they are investigating that meth head plotline. They come to a dead end there. That's where the movie becomes directionless and aimless. That's when the movie just becomes the killer doing something and them responding to what the killer has done, instead of the cops doing anything for themselves. Yeah, that's Spiral though. I mean, again, I'm gonna watch it a lot. I'm gonna watch it probably 2 more times in the cinemas. I've already watched it three times. I'll watch it another 2 times probably, and then of course, I'll watch it a million times and learn the movie word for word when the home release comes. But yeah, that's Spiral. That's me rambling about Spiral for 2 hours or so. Okay, I'm done. I think I've said my piece. I got it off my chest. I've let my emotions out. Done. That's Spiral. I'm done. Okay, I'm going to end the video here. I swear I have nothing else to say. I'm done. So that's Spiral. Yep, if anybody actually sat through these 2 hours, oh, good for you. You feeling okay? Is there something not quite right with you? Thanks for watching, though, I guess. Yeah, I'm done. That's Spiral. That's my video. That's to say. Then for real this time. Okay, bye. Thanks for watching. See ya.